They say upside wins championships in fantasy football, and I believe that's absolutely true, but I also think there's a time and place where making the unsexy pick is actually the right decision. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. 6 unsexy players that you should still be drafting in fantasy football this year. And with these players, we're not going to go disgustingly far down the board here to get into the unsexiness. A player you would consider in this category in years past is a guy like David Montgomery. So we're hopefully going to stick in that range of players today. Cameron, the first guy you're going to bring up here, very popular bounce back candidate, a guy we talked about in our bounce back episode as well. That's Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, and I think it's this season after last season. Anybody you see in that baby blue with the dark blue is kind of unsexy, right? Anybody on the Tennessee Titans, you're just like, do I really want them on my team? And I'm here to tell you, I've bought it, hook, line, and sinker, the Cam Ward camp hype. He's here. He's arrived. He is legit. I'm not saying that I think he's going to be like a phenomenal quarterback, but I do think he's going to be able to make throws. And I think that's what we've seen so far. That's what we saw in college. And that's really all Calvin Ridley needs. Last season, 120 targets, which was 18th. 64 receptions, which was 34th. He had a 59.2 catchable target rate, which was 97th last year. It cannot get worse. He had over 1,000 unrealized air yards. He had more unrealized air yards than he had realized air yards. He led the league in both unrealized and just air yards in general. He was third in deep targets with 32. He caught under 40% of those. Like everything he did, Will Levis could not connect. Like it just did not compute for those guys last season. He's coming back again this year. It's Tyler Lockett. It's Xavier Restrepo. Right there, there's not a lot there that you're going, oh no, Calvin Ridley's going to fight for targets. He's the alpha. He's got the money. They're going to use him. He showed that he still had it last year, right? Still 15.9% or not percent, 15.9 yards per reception and only 8 red zone targets. So wasn't using the red zone a lot or really at all. And yeah, only 5 touchdowns, was still the wide receiver 18. Now you can get him as wide receiver 27 with a huge upgrade at the quarterback position as far as being able to make throws that are going to benefit Calvin Ridley.
Elic Eomanor, Chigakonkwo, just a few other guys. If you want to throw them into the perfect target competition for Calvin Ridley. I've looked at this as well as and I'm not promising this is what's going to happen, but you look at what happened for Terry McLaurin last year when he got the Jaden Daniels upgrade. By no means am I saying Cam Ward is on Jaden Daniels' level or Calvin Ridley on Terry McLaurin's level for that matter, but you get these talented wide receivers, a competent quarterback, a good quarterback. They're productive in fantasy football, especially when they don't have the target competition around them. Again, you look at Terry McLaurin. It was Zach Ertz. It was Noah Brown. It was not Diami Brown. It was Luke McCaffrey. Like there wasn't much target competition for him, just like there isn't much target competition for here for Calvin Ridley either, Ty. This is definitely an unsexy name that I'm drafting. Are you drafting Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of stinks that Ridley, at least in the best ball streets, goes right in a range of players that I find myself just saying, like, I do like a lot of other players here other than Ridley. But the other thing is that, like, when you look at home leagues, when you look at guys that he's going around in your home leagues over, like on Sleeper, for instance, Chris Godwin, who's on the PUP list and maybe gets ramped up into the season, so he's not firing out of the gates right away. We're talking about like Tony Pollard. Like there are question marks of other guys that are going around Ridley in your home league. So a little bit different in best ball, but again, like Ridley, we're not asking him to take the superstar jump. And if we get that, awesome, right? Like that's an added bonus. But if we just go from, bottom barrel offense to average, Ridley's going to find himself in the 20s, and then he's a value because you took him at the wide receiver 31 or in the 30s in your home leagues. Then,
yeah, he's going nearly 20 picks later in your home leagues. He's going 55 overall. Over on Underdog, he's going 76 overall in half PPR scoring in your home league. So yeah, Calvin Ridley, a guy you can absolutely get in on without having to pay an expensive price tag in your home leagues. And you're not worrying about the guys like Jalen Waddle, the guys like Travis Hunter going in this range as well, who, we've talked about before, do have some meaningful upside to them as well. Before we move any further, though, I got to acknowledge we've been stuck on this 88% here for the last week and a half, 2 weeks here. 88% of you who have stopped by the channel, watched our videos, haven't actually yet subscribed. So we're going to take a quick moment to change that. It's 100% free. Just got to hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is out. Yes, we want to bring you fantasy football insights, but we are 3 dudes who literally became close friends over playing fantasy football with one another. We know you're trying to beat your league mates. We're trying to beat one another as well. So hopefully we can remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with the game we all love. That is fantasy football along the way. Ty, I'll kick it down to you here. I think Chris Olave has become an unsexy name. When you put the name in the doc, I was originally like, is there still a little bit of appeal here with the name of Chris Olave? But the more I thought about it, the more displeased I've come in regards to my analysis around Chris Olave. I think he is deemed unsexy in terms of fantasy football.
Well, you bring up a good point, because the name Chris Olave should have, I don't want to say some merit to it, but it should hold some weight. And I just think there has been so much that has happened in Chris Olave's 3 seasons so far that it is hurting the name value of Chris Olave. But we can't forget that Chris Olave is an elite target getter. Okay. And maybe that is because he's just been the only guy in New Orleans, but a spade is a spade. The guy gets targets. His 25.4% target rate over the last 3 seasons is 8th best among wide receivers. So we're talking top 10 in targets per route run. And he's also also 9th best in yards per route run in that same span. So again, when the ball is going through the air in New Orleans, it's typically going to Chris Olave. And according to PFF, Kellen Moore's primary slot wide receiver averages between 15.3 to 21.5 PPR points per game. I doubt that we could see that high end number in a Tyler Shuck led offense. But if we're going to get 15, 16 points, that's a lot better than what you're probably going to be finding in the mid 30s of your drafts. Olave has been the better slot wide receiver compared to Rashid Shaheed. So I'm going to just go out on a limb and say, I think Olave is going to be the guy that's going to be moving around here. Yes, he'll be the outside guy, but if we're getting more slot snaps, we're getting more easy targets and for an elite target getter. I talked about the range of players that Calvin Ridley goes in your home leagues. Olave goes in a range of players where there are just a lot of question marks as well. Quinshon Judkins, who knows how that's going to play out? Travis Kelce, yeah, Rashee Rice's suspension may help him out for a little bit, but what we saw last year is definitely not the same Travis Kelce. And if we get another step back, could get pretty dicey. And we're talking Jordan Addison as well, who also could be suspended. So you may not like the team. You have to respect the talent that is Chris Olave and the fact, again, that he is the clear target getter. And yes, a bottom offense, but I care about fantasy points, and he may be a high floor, low ceiling guy.
It's funny because you could look at Chris Olave and be like, well, yeah, he got a new quarterback too. Is he going to take? It's just like, no, Tyler Shuck and Cam Ward are 2 completely different quarterbacks here. And like, that's the terrifying thing for me about Chris Olave is like, oh, I'll go ahead and use the pun. Do I really want to shuck around and find out? I don't know if I do with Chris Olave entirely. I do agree he's an elite target getter. He's the most healthiest wide receiver, the most healthiest pass catcher on this team. Could they condense this offense, keep it very simple? We're going to pepper Alvin Kamara in the flats. We're going to go ahead and hit Chris Olave over the middle in the slot. I hope that's what they do, because that's what's going to benefit Tyler Shuck the most, is by getting him in rhythm on time with these easy completions. Man, I just question how much the New Orleans Saints are actually going to score the football this year. And that's the biggest thing for me is, could Olave could finish well ahead of 35. I don't know how high the range of outcomes for him is, Cameron. And I don't know where you stand, if you have a specific opinion on that.
I really want to like Chris Olave. But it's, he's got a rookie quarterback who's older.
You can just break up with him. You don't have to let him down easy. You can just break up with him. It sounds like you're trying to say, no, it's me, not you.
It kind of feels like that. I mean, he's got a rookie quarterback who's older than he is. I mean, Tyler Shuck's almost 8 months older than Chris Olave.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're like, you can't project anything with that. I'm looking at Terry because I've compared him to Terry McLaurin, and that's how I feel about Chris Olave. And I'm looking at 2021 Terry McLaurin, where he had 130 receiving or 130 targets, 77 receptions, 1,053 yards, and 5 touchdowns, and finished as a wide receiver 25. And that feels like a good year this season for Chris Olave. But at the same time, a bad season is going to be like 120 targets for 70 receptions, or is it going to essentially be what Calvin Ridley was last year? Is a bad season for Chris Olave, right? Like, I see him like, so there's just not much variance. To be fair, both would outperform wide receiver 36. So I agree with you, Ty. Like, I don't think it's a bad pick. I just would never watch a game that Chris Olave is going to play in. And that's just because of the rest of his team. And it stinks. I like watching Kamara play. I like watching Chris Olave play. I like watching Rashid Shaheed play. I don't want to watch any game. I dislike the New Orleans Saints for other reasons for a long time.
There's a little bit of hometown bias sneaking in there, but yeah.
But this year, like, I just don't want to watch them play at all. Like, it's going to be bad football on top of bad football on top of bad football.
And this seems to like, I'll kick it back to you here, Ty, to close it out. But this also seems like one of those picks where, man, I want to bet on a good player, but the bad team component is just there. And it's not like it's an average team. It's not like it's a good player on an average team. It's a good player on like what's probably going to be maybe a bottom 3 team in the NFL this year. Is that too harsh on the Saints? That's the part I have trouble rectifying, but considering the ADP, considering the names of players going around them and the risk that's attached to them, do you think it basically comes down to the question of, and everyone has heard themselves with this question, do you think Chris Olave can outpace players like you brought up, Ty Judkins, who's probably going to miss at least 6+ games? I wouldn't even be surprised if we get closer to 8 to 10 games with Judkins, just based on how things in court are going to play out and the whole contract situation with Judkins and how he hasn't actually signed yet. And there's a lot of other details in that. Jordan Addison, does he get 2 games, 3 games? Will they come down a little bit harsher, say 4 or 5 games, right? Like, depends if you think Chris Olave can outpace all those guys. Clearly, Ty, you think he can, but what else do you want to toss in here before we move on?
I don't think that maybe this will sound like I'm backtracking, but I promise I'm not. The range of outcomes isn't super wide.
No.
So that I understand the sense that, like, yeah, he may not have the high ceiling compared to some of the other unsexy names. He may not have the offensive component. He may not score a ton, but I think that really isn't the point when it comes to Chris Olave. Olave could quite literally be the volume play, and it may not be the most efficient volume, but it's volume nonetheless. So volume has to count for something at some point. And he may, it may be a wide receiver 29 finish on the year, but that's an advantage when there are guys going ahead that could finish outside the top 35, then right where Chris Olave is going, and you get advantage in your drafts then.
Yeah, and I'll bring this full circle to some of the names you brought up at top. What if Chris Godwin isn't actually like fully ready and back until like week 6, week 7? What happens when Dylan Gabriel is throwing Jerry Jeudy the ball? I'm sorry, I'm just going to take the bet on Tyler Shuck, plain and simple. What happens, when Jordan Addison gets suspended? What happens when Cam Scatterpoo takes the backfield from Tyrone Tracy in week 6? Like, what happens then? All of a sudden, Chris Olave doesn't actually look like that bad of a pick in this range of players. So, yeah, definitely range of outcomes for the players around him. But Chris Olave seems like, you're going to get between wide receiver 25, wide receiver 40 this year. You're drafting him closer to 40. So, not a incorrect pick to make is kind of the consensus that we're landing on here. You just have to know what you're actually signing up for when you do draft Chris Olave. Now, I will move on to a player that I believe is a good player on a good team, unlike the previous 2 good players on fine teams. Devonta Smith, value currently suppressed to the wide receiver 28 in drafts. And we all know how dominant the Eagles were on the ground last year and how frequently they ran the ball because of it. Devonta Smith last year, even given those conditions, he only played 13 games, yet finished as the wide receiver 30 overall and the wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game. He only averaged 1.4 points less per game than his teammate A.J. Brown did last year. Now, Smitty did run pure on touchdowns. He caught 8 of them on 89 targets, but this is something that I'm really challenging myself in this offseason is what am I believing about this team, and do the narratives I place around these players fit the larger team narrative that I'm envisioning for this year? So I'm a believer this year that the Eagles offense this year, they're not going to run the ball 70 more times than every other team in the league. And if this team does throw more, then Devonta Smith has to be benefited by that. So looking at his average draft position of wide receiver 28, you're essentially drafting, you are literally drafting him next to his 2 worst fantasy finishes of his career at wide receiver 29 and wide receiver 30. So if it's a title of this show, right, it's not a sexy pick, but I think he can absolutely outperform this pick, give you a finish closer to wide receiver 20 than wide receiver 30.
Yeah, I've always been a huge Devonta Smith guy, and I love Devonta. My only concern is just we never really saw Goddard, AJ Brown, and Devonta all on the field at the same time. Sure. Because when they are all 3 on the field at the same time, it is AJ Brown, and then it's Devonta and Goddard kind of fighting for targets, and that's the only concern. However, like you said, when he was on the field, he produced last year. He played extremely well. This team is going to throw the ball more. Teams are going to make them beat them through the air. I mean, they're still going to be one of the top 3 teams in rush attempts. Like we're not saying that all of a sudden it's going to flip completely and they're going to be a pass heavy team. They're not. They're just
top
not going
5
to be
in rush attempts this year still.
Yep, but just like you said, Lucas, they're not going to be far and away in rush attempts ahead of everybody else. So I like it coming back to earth. My only concern is just because he is going. I guess he is only going wide receiver. Wow, I didn't realize how far he's been pushed on the board.
He was going wide receiver 24, and now it's like over the last month, he's closer to 30 than 20. And I'm struggling to get a grip on that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you because I really like him. My concern was, I think his ceiling is going to be like a wide receiver 17, 18. But if you're going to be a wide receiver 28, I mean, like right now I have him as my wide receiver 23. And that's I have him pretty middle of the road of where I think he can finish.
Sure.
So his middle of the road, I have 5 spots better than where you're taking him. So yeah, I think I have to agree then that this is a good pick.
Yeah, well, and look at the guys going ahead of him. Right? I'm not going to debate you and say that DK Metcalf, Jameson Williams, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton. I'm not going to debate you that they have more upside than Devonta Smith. I would probably agree that they potentially do. But do I think their floors are lower than Devonta Smith? I also think that's probably true. Like, what happens if Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf never form a connection? What happens when Jameson Williams, doesn't take that third-year leap, or not third-year leap, take this leap that everybody's expecting him to this year? What happens when that doesn't pan out? What happens when George Pickens is basically just Devonta Smith on a slightly worse offense? Throws the ball more potentially, but maybe not sufficient, right? Like, there's a lot of ways in which you can say, Devonta Smith belongs in this range of players. I also see a world in which he can outperform all of them. Where do you fit into the puzzle here of Devonta Smith?
Devonta's an interesting one to me because I think all 3 of us would say this really isn't as unsexy as people make it out to be, because we like the player, we like the offense, but I feel like the taste that people still have in their mouths from last year is just that he did have only 89 targets. Like, he didn't even crack 100. And granted, he only played 13 games, but people look at Devonta as now second fiddle in a not so pass happy offense, and which is fine. But if let's just say hypothetically, this offense doesn't change up at all, and we get the same amount of rushing attempts as we got last year, I don't care if the volume doesn't look good. I'm betting that this Philly offense stays as good as they are, right? Because if that happens, Devonta Smith, for as bad of a year as he had last year, he was the wide receiver 15 points per game. So I'm okay taking him. I'm okay with people still feeling still thinking that gosh, Devonta Smith is not the same player. He's not as sexy as George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, whatever. Because to me, when I see Devonta Smith, it's my bet on this Philly offense still being one of the top offenses in the league.
And I do want to go back to a point that Cameron had kind of brought up as well, of when all three of the Eagles' weapons are on the field in terms of the receiving game. It is pretty inconsistent with Devonta Smith. And I get people don't want to have to like feel burned by that or worry about, can I actually start Devonta Smith this week, or is he only going to give me 2.5 points? I get that. I 100% understand that. I am just telling you, when I look at his ADP and people are clearly pushing more sexy names up the board, like a George Pickens, like a Jameson Williams, Devonta Smith only slides down because of that. And to me, people just aren't as excited, and they find that pick, that name, just a little bit less sexy than the other guys in this range. So just add a little bit of validity to the topic, but also to why people are letting him slide down the board a bit. That's kind of how I'll end on Devonta Smith. Before we take it into a quick break here, because we have talked about our friends over at Underdog. You can draft all these players right now. They're giving out Best Ball Mania, $15 million in prizes up for grabs this summer. They have a ton of other contests for you too. We'll take a quick break here from them. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up, because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. All right, fellas, let's keep it on chugging here. We talked about Calvin Ridley, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith as unsexy picks that you should still be making this year. We'll move a little bit further down the board now. Cameron, from our hometown Minnesota Vikings, Aaron Jones, a player you think we should still be drafting this year?
Yeah, I think we're falling too far in love with Jordan Mason. And because of that, and maybe we're not even too in love with Jordan Mason, but we're punishing Aaron Jones too much because of the love that we have for Jordan Mason. I understand Jordan Mason could be a double-digit touchdown threat this season. He could be the goal line back that the Vikings have been waiting for. But let's not pretend like he's going to be stealing touchdowns from Aaron Jones, because Aaron Jones never had those touchdowns in the first place.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones, 7 total touchdowns last year, only 5 on the ground. 3 the year before, 7 the year before that, only 2 rushing touchdowns. Was still a top 10 running back that season, by the way. 10 in 2021, still top 12. And then he finally, had 9 rushing touchdowns, had more than 5 back in 2020. Aaron Jones has not been a rushing touchdown guy since 2020. He had that one season in 2019 that was kind of like his James Cook-esque year, where he had 16, was the running back 2 overall. Other than that, he's had 9, 4, 2, 2, 5 over the last couple of seasons. So I think we're just pushing him down because we're like, I just don't think he's going to see the same goal line work. He didn't see it last year anyways. He saw 62 targets, 51 receptions, 408 yards. He's not losing that to Jordan Mason. He's going to keep that receiving role, especially with, JJ McCarthy out here, who may run a little bit more than Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold had 65 rush attempts already last season. We saw Aaron Jones have 255 rush attempts himself. Ty Chandler and Cam Akers combined for another 110. At the age that Aaron Jones is at, I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't be upset if we see him closer to 210 carries this year, because that probably means we get 17 games of Aaron Jones rather than betting on this 255. And between 150 and 170 carries for Jordan Mason sounds about right. So I just don't think that this drop off, because we're going to consolidate all the backup carries into one guy who's going to take the goal line work, I just don't see that hurting Aaron Jones. And he finished as a wide receiver or running back 16 last year. And I would say the Vikings arguably have a better offensive line this season. So I just don't know why we're continually pushing him down the board, where he's behind a guy now like Tony Pollard, when I think he's still going to see better work than Tony Pollard is going to see on a better team. So I'm just confused why we're pushing him down so much when the other guy is not going to impact his role as greatly as I think people are getting worried about.
I'm still trying to figure out what all of the Vikings offensive moves actually mean for this year. Because is it a red zone thing? Is it that Kevin O'Connell wants to just run the football more? I don't think that's it. I mean, I do want to name the reality that Aaron Jones, he was 7th in red zone rush attempt share inside of the 5-yard line last year, inside of the 10-yard line, inside of the 20-yard line as well. But
it just didn't convert to anything.
It didn't convert to No, it only converted to 4 touchdowns inside of the 20-yard line. So when those touchdowns aren't going anywhere, those rush attempts can go to Jordan Mason, but even if Aaron Jones still gets 2 of those, like he's Aaron Jones has just never been a guy that's needed touchdowns. So yeah, he's a guy where I found myself where I'm looking at Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson, who's the running back 30. I literally have the ADPs right in front of me. Why am I asking you both? Jordan Mason is the running back 30, right? When I'm looking at all those guys, I just click Aaron Jones. I'm like, I just think he has the upside to outperform all of them. Whereas I think Jordan Mason might just get stuck into a short distance goal line situation running back. That's not necessarily his forte, but I'm still trying to figure out what this backfield and all the additions kind of look like. I don't know if you have a better sense on it, Ty, of what you think is actually going to happen. But originally I'm like, well, Kevin O'Connell wants to run the football more. At the same time, though, a tiger doesn't change its stripes. And I don't think Kevin O'Connell is necessarily looking to, quote unquote, run the ball more, maybe more so than he is maybe inside of the red zone. But that doesn't matter for Aaron Jones in the past.
No, I wonder if it comes down to really the amount of plays that this Minnesota offense runs, right? Are they going to increase from last year where they just went over 1,000? I've got them going over that compared to last year. And I think part of that is that Minnesota, with all the moves that they had, obviously they want to use the run game more. Like, you can't just invest in the offensive line, bring in Jordan Mason and say like, no, we're going to keep things the same. I'm sorry.
We're actually going to throw more than we did last year.
Honestly, like, that would be the greatest curveball in history. And I'd be like, okay, you know what, KLC, like, I'll give you that one. Yes. That being said, I think what people are assuming here with the price tag with Aaron Jones is that Jordan Mason is going to have so many touchdowns and Aaron Jones isn't going to have any, when all three of us still think that Aaron Jones is going to be the 1A back in this backfield. He's going to get the receiving work, like Cam said. So maybe it is a little bit too that we're talking about a 30-year-old coming off a career high in carries. So maybe people are expecting regression, but I feel if the efficiency of this offense is still going to stay as high as we are projecting it to be, it's not obviously going to be as high as it was last year with Sam Darnold, but it's still going to be among some of the top offenses. This is very similar to Devonta Smith for me, in the sense that, like, Aaron Jones, I'm still wanting a piece of this Vikings offense, and it may not be, again, what we saw last year, but it's a bet on the Vikings offense still being one of the top offenses.
And, Aaron Jones is going to get the passing work in this offense as well ahead of Jordan Mason. So even if it is, third down, you're still going to see Aaron Jones out on the field catching passes for this team as well. All of us have him inside of our top 25. Cameron, you and I have him at 21. Ty, you have him at 22. So clearly we're still invested in Aaron Jones here as like a perfectly fine kind of, unsexy pick here at the running back 28. It's kind of one of those bets on this running back draft class that Aaron Jones was a part of. It was James Conner in this class. It was Joe Mixon. It was all these guys who were in this draft class that we're still betting on, even though, the wheels could fall off at any point here. Just an easier pick at and bet at cost to make here with Aaron Jones. Ty, we're not going far down the board. We're literally going to move one running back further down the board, only 2 picks further down. That's because Brian Robinson Jr. goes as the running back 29. Yeah, this is extremely unsexy. I mean, I don't know another way to put it, but he is the lead running back for the Washington Commanders, and currently, he's bottom of the barrel of the running back ones for a team going off the board.
Which is kind of funny because everyone thinks that this Washington offense can take a step forward. Like, they are projected to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. And you look at the price of Jaden Daniels, you look at the price of Terry McLaurin, you look Debo and Brian Robinson are really kind of the odd ones out that their prices haven't gone up. You can understand Debo's a little bit because Big Bone Debo is still running
Big
around.
Bone.
Boom, boom.
But again, it doesn't really make sense to me. Again, this offense is projected to put up points, and I really think it is as simple as that. You may not think that Brian Robinson is the most talented running back in the league. We would agree with that. But just looking at this Washington running back room, it's Brian Robinson, it's Austin Eckler, who is officially a shell of what we were getting with the Chargers. Chris Rodriguez Jr. and Jacory Krosky Merritt. And
So you better bring up the rookie that everybody's hot and bothered about.
Guys, this is Brian Robinson's backfield. Like, we can just flat out say it. He may not be a 200 carry type guy. He may only give you 180 carries on the year. But again, if this offense is projected to put up points, Brian Robinson is going to be involved with those. Yes, Daniels could steal some carries inside the 5 because he was third in carries inside the 5 of all quarterbacks. But there's still going to be enough for Brian Robinson. And we kind of forget that Brian Robinson at the start of last year was one of the top running backs in all of fantasy. He was the running back 12 in points per game through the first 5 weeks of the season. And then he battled injuries the rest of the year, and it showed up in your fantasy scores. So again, this is another bet on just this Washington, a bet on another offense putting up points. And honestly, Brian Robinson's schedule, at least right out of the gate, Arizona, Green Bay, Vegas, and Atlanta.
That ain't bad.
That ain't half bad. Like, Washington should be winning all of those games. And that just sounds like work for Brian Robinson right out of the gate. So I'll be honest, my running back 26 projection, I don't know if I can put it any higher because we get into really a tier of running backs that we just project for more complete work, I'll call it, between receiving and carries and goal line touches and all that stuff. But I mean, I'm telling you, Brian Robinson, Aaron Jones, I'll throw Aaron Jones in this. These are the two running backs. And I'm like, you know what? If I can't get a running back 2 until the range between 24 and 30, I'm cool with Aaron Jones and Brian Robinson.
Cam, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because just looking at your projections, you are lower on Brian Robinson than the rest of us. But really all that I have to, and it's not even add, it's more so just emphasizing the point that you started off with, Ty. If people think this Washington Commanders team is going to take a step forward with Jaden Daniels under center again, to me, that's hey, they're going to be in scoring position more often. That means Brian Robinson's going to have a few more opportunities to punch the ball into the end zone. Jaden Daniels is going to play a part in that, but if they're in scoring position, it's more opportunities for Brian Robinson Jr. Like, let's have 2 + 2 = 4 there and not overcomplicate this. But Cameron, I think your ranking does say, hey, you know what? But like, let's slow our brakes maybe a little bit here. Why is that?
Yeah, I just see Najee Harris when I look at him, and without the receiving upside is essentially what I'm watching with Brian Robinson. It's just slow mudding. He looks like he's got a trailer attached to him. The thing is, he's got to score double-digit touchdowns to be a top 25 running back.
Why can't
he? He can. But I'm not projecting this offense to take another step forward. I'm projecting the fact that sophomore quarterbacks who have fantastic rookie seasons don't always just take the next step. Sure. You have film out on you now. Teams are taking you a little bit more seriously. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to fall off the edge of the cliff, but I'm not saying I don't necessarily think that they're for sure going to be in more scoring situations. I don't think they're for sure going to be in the red zone more often. I think if we see again what we saw last year, 4.3 yards. I mean, he's not going to he probably won't even hit 1,000 rushing yards. He had 20 receptions. If he doesn't hit double-digit touchdowns, that's why I have him low. I just don't think he finds the end zone quite as much. I will admit it's in the range of outcomes. Yeah. He could be David Montgomery light this season, where it's no receiving work. He hits 1,050 yards. He has 13 touchdowns. You're extremely happy. I understand that's in the range of outcomes. I'm just not projecting the step forward for Washington that's going to get him into that spot.
Which that's the flip side of the coin. What happens if the Commanders don't live up to last year's hype? What happens if they actually do regress a bit this year and Jane Daniels doesn't take a monstrous leap forward? And not even that it has to be a monstrous leap for Jane Daniels, because his rookie season was already monstrous. But what happens when this Washington Commanders offense actually doesn't look as sharp as it did last year? And which is completely fair. I would maybe just push back and say, hey, they've made the investments though to make sure this offense sticks up to pace. This team did go out and trade for Laramie Tunsil along the offensive line, drafted Josh Connolly Jr. in the first round to make sure that's beefed up. You do get another weapon in this offense, Deebo Samuel. Like, I find it hard to believe this Commanders team doesn't at least sustain what they put on the field last year, but it's foolish for us to say it's not within the range of outcomes. For actually, there's a lot of new pieces we're trying to gel together. What happens if they don't? And they actually take a small step back from where they were last year? Go ahead, Ty.
I think the final piece of this is that the team is okay with Brian Robinson being their guy in the backfield. They could have gone into the draft and taken quite literally any running back.
Ravion Henderson,
Quinn
Harvey, or Harvey.
Yeah. Harvey, right? Like, they could have taken any of the running backs, and they said, no, we're good with Brian Robinson. So I'm not going to sit here and say that means like, oh yeah, 250 touches guaranteed for Brian Robinson Jr. But the guy, if I'm getting Najee Harris at the running back 29 in an offense that's better than what Pittsburgh's has been, I'm okay with that.
We'll put a bow on it there. I'm curious to hear in the comments what people have to say about Brian Robinson Jr. here as well. If you think you're like, whatever, I'll just take my medicine, get another running back on my team. If you think this Commanders offense takes a step forward this year, if you think they regress slightly this year, let us know in the comments. You can see where we have these guys projected all in our 2025 draft guide. You get a sneak peek of it. If you're watching over on YouTube, you get individual projections from each of us on the players that we talk about, but we have full projections on 292 players. We've got full team profiles. We've got video archive coming. We've got fun stats that have kind of gone into our research for all these players as well. So get your hands on that. That is down in the pinned comment or the link in the description below. Fantasy Football Fellas 2025 draft guide out now. We know you're prepping for your leagues. Get your hands on that. Last player I'll bring up here, fellas. I think we might be able to keep this one short and sweet. We'll see. I'm curious what you two have to say, but admittedly, Jakobi Meyers has been a blind spot in my drafting all summer because there are a handful of players around him like I wanted to target for their upside specifically. Then I thought about the narratives, like I've been doing this offseason, that I've been holding on to for this Raiders team. Geno Smith, clearly an upgrade at quarterback for this team. That's got to be a good thing for the wide receivers. Jack Bech camp news hasn't been great. Do I really think Dante Thornton is like a legitimate threat to Jakobi Meyers? No, I really don't believe that. And who else is there then after Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty? Like, with how bad the offense was last year without the improvement of Geno Smith, Jakobi Meyers still the wide receiver 26 in fantasy points per game. Then you look at his usage, he was the wide receiver 16 in expected fantasy points per game. Like, at some point, I just kind of have to sit back in my chair and say, yeah, like, you know what? Like, Jakobi Meyers, wide receiver 39, actually a solid pick.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. I mean, last season, he was wide receiver 23, 87 receptions, 129 targets, 1,000 yards. He only had 4 touchdowns. You know, he's a guy who, if all of a sudden he hits 8 touchdowns last year, he's a wide receiver 14. He's ahead of Cortland Sutton. So, like you said, you get the upgrade. Things could fall into place for Jakobi Meyers, and we could be looking at the next year and going, wow, I really didn't see that coming, but we should have. Because he's shown it, right? He showed it in New England that he could be legit. He gets the chance last year, shows up, plays well with bad quarterback play. And there's just not, like you said, Lucas, nobody to really contest. I mean, obviously Brock Bowers is going to get his, but nobody else to really contest those targets from Jakobi Meyers. And they paid Geno Smith a lot of money. And I don't think they paid him all that money. Just hand the ball off to Ashton Genty 75 times a game. They're going to throw the ball, and Jakobi Meyers is going to be a big part of that.
Ty, you can jump in with your thoughts here. I get like it's. I think it's just as simple as that with Jakobi Meyers. Like, why are we overcomplicating this? It's just an unsexy pick where, sure, I'll chase the upside of a Deebo. I'll chase the upside of a Jordan Addison on a better offense. I'll chase the upside of Jerry Jeudy after what I saw last year. What I saw from Jakobi Meyers last year is that he's really the only wide receiver that is worth feeding on this team.
I look at Jakobi Meyers like Kmart, Devonta Smith.
Sure.
In the sense that they are
Kmart,
the third
Kmart's the best analogy too. Not Walmart.
Correct. Kmart specifically. Maybe even Dollar General. I'll go even as far as
there we go. Shout out Dollar General. Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. Jigs. Yeah. So in the sense that like they are the number 3 guys in their offense behind another pass catcher and behind a very talented running back, I don't understand the hold up on Jakobi Meyers for people. Yes, it is going to be a question of like, the reason why he goes so late is because no one projects him to score a ton. No one thinks that he's going to be a volume monster. And again, Kmart, Devonta Smith, in the sense that Vegas is not going to be as efficient or as productive as Philly's offense. But it does have to count for something. So Jakobi Meyers, that's bringing another guy that we talked about, similar to Chris Olave in the sense that like may not have the highest ceiling, but if he finishes somewhere between like 30 to 34, you're kind of winning because just the name at the top there, Jordan Addison. I don't think Jordan Addison is going to be finishing ahead of Jakobi Meyers this year. Like all things considered, like Jakobi Meyers is value. Now there are some people, just because it's on my mind right now, on our mock draft live streams, which you should join in on Monday nights.
Heck yeah.
There are people that will wait for Jakobi Meyers to be like their number 3 guy. I don't know how comfortable I would be if Jakobi Meyers was my number 3 wide receiver on my team. But if he's my number 4 guy, like I know exactly what I'm getting with Jakobi Meyers, that like he may be a flex rotation piece if I need it and can, fill a need in a pinch. So yeah, this is definitely an unsexy one just because it's Vegas.
If you see Geno Smith come in, start pushing the ball downfield more a little bit this year, who's to say Jakobi Meyers doesn't get in on that action either? And all of a sudden we're not just getting slants across the middle of the field. We're not just getting easy completions on the outside, short to intermediate completions. What happens if we do hit a couple long balls with Jakobi this year?
Those are going to go to Trey Tucker and
look, I'm not out here promising the people that we're getting Malik Neighbors out of Jakobi Meyers or anything. All I'm saying is what happens when the ADOT goes up slightly this year too. We had a few extra yards on there as well. I'm just, again, sprinkling in the possibility of that happening as well. We'll put a bow on everything there. Again, we'll be back with more content later this week. We go live on Mondays and Wednesdays as well. Mondays are redraft mock drafts. Wednesdays are drafts over with our friends over at Underdog. So if you're not joined there yet, scan that QR code on your screen or use the code FELLAS when you sign up. They'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we will make sure to send you our 2025 draft guide for free on top of it. Follow our other socials as well. FFFellas on Twitter, the FFFellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. And if you're YouTube through and through, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts over there as well.